Assalamu alaikum, ya aliman al-mu'minin al-mu'minat. This is your host, Jamil Ahsan, with a new episode of discussion with Dr.Naweed Syed. This will be our fifth program of the series. I'm very thankful to Dr. Saab to spare so much time for us. But he's here with us today as an expert and and we'll be asking him questions throughout the program. The format of the program is that we have two participants here who will have their own questions, so I'll introduce them to you. First one is Farwa Jafri. Farwa is in the fourth year of her undergrad. And second is Sukaina Jamil. She's just finished her graduation, I think, a year ago, and is currently in a position. She's smiling. Maybe I gave her wrong information, but we'll be talking and discussing different questions. We do have some participant questions which we'll also share. But before we start, I'll just give you a brief update on the discussion so far. So as in the initial phase, initial program, we discussed that we would have different topics that we will discuss and will be directed primarily towards the youth. This program is a part of QAIM TV's Ahlebait in 2050. So we're looking towards that vision, trying to see where we would be in 2050 and how to get there. And as discussed previously, we had selected different topics. So the first one was education. Different questions were asked. We had detailed discussions for the last 5 programs on that. Today we move on to the next topic, which is job search. And we'll discuss with Dr. Saab today on different aspects of that. So having said that, let me start, Dr. Saab, by asking you a question that came in from one of the audiences. And the name is Raza Abbas, and he's from London, Ontario. His question is, I'm completing my graduation this year. I don't have job experience, so how can I make my resume be looked at, whereas everyone needs experience? And as you say, Dr. Saab, it's a loaded question.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum to everyone. I think it's really very pertinent and it's a great question. You know, I will begin by saying that when Al Capone was thrown in jail, you know, the famous criminal in Chicago, he was, you know, put behind the bar. And the next day, you know what he wanted to see? He asked for a newspaper. He actually wanted to see whether he made it to the front page of the newspaper or not, even for bad reasons. He wanted to see himself really projected there. Also, when you look at a group photo, if you look good in that group photo, you know, you will buy 10 copies and you will praise the photographer like, you know, anything. On the other hand, if you are blinking and your face is really not at what you like it to be, and everybody else looks great, you will curse the photographer. So I think for people, the most important thing that we talked about earlier as well, that if you like gulab jamun and jalebi, you don't take it when you go fishing. You take what fish likes. Otherwise, you catch cold and no fish. You can sit there all day with a little piece of jalebi hanging. There's not going to be any fish on your plate that day. So it's really important that you do your homework. We get hundreds of letters every week from people all over the world. And I know they just changed the name. And it is the same letter, which is impersonal, which is irrelevant for the most part. So I think the important thing is to really do your homework before you apply for a particular job. They don't really care if you are from Kathmandu, from your, Stanford, Harvard, MIT. Your hires for employees, they are not looking for your past. They're actually looking for their own future, what it is that you bring to the table. So the most important thing to remember is your resume is your identity. So make sure you put every single effort to really highlight yourself and make yourself in line with the kind of job that you're looking for. That's really, really important. 90% of anything is showing up. So show up, for example, by submitting your letter. And when you're writing a letter, it's really important that you talk about company more than you talk about yourself, because, you know, that's what will attract their attention, because they are looking for someone who will make them look good or make the company more profitable. That's really something important. So do your homework. I was interviewed, since you asked a question, from London, Ontario. I was offered the directorship of the Robarts Institute in London, Ontario. And when I went for interview, I knew about the entire university more than I knew about my own university. So I did my homework. I even knew the name of the actual security guard who was at the reception. So when I went and I called him by his first name, he just about fell off his chair, right? And throughout my tour, he shadowed me like anything, bringing me water, bringing me things. So take interest in the company and then the people of the company more than you try to sell yourself. So that's really something very, very key for all kinds of jobs. When you're applying, do your homework. So if you're applying, for example, a research laboratory, find out where that professor has been publishing. Have they published something recently? And if they have published something recently, that means they have funding. They have graduate students, meaning that the lab is active and viable. Do a little bit of more search to see what kind of work they're publishing and if it aligns with your interests or not. And then write them a letter. I just read your paper, and honestly, I was sitting in the bus and I fell off the bus seat because you have published really phenomenal research, but the gaps that you have identified, I think I can help you fill because your research interests align with my research interests. So try to pair yourself, but as someone who will help the actual company or help the individual or research laboratory achieving their goals. So that's really something very, very important. The other thing you need to do is to increase your circle of influence. Make sure that you get noticed wherever you are. There are some important teachers and professors that you work with. Deposit in their emotional bank account. You know, go and see them, say hello to them, talk to them, take interest in their work. And now what you have is people will recognize you. And if you ever wanted to withdraw something, you will be able to withdraw from that account that you have deposited something. But if you never deposit anything, there's nothing to take out. So I think you need appropriate, very strong letter of support, letter of references. And this is how you increase the circle of your influence. People who will be able to vouch for you and support you in your endeavors to secure a particular job or what have you. You know, the other important thing is that, you know, when you are writing your resume, make sure that you really align yourself in line with what it is that they're looking for. I can tell you, I was a department head for 10 years and I hired several key researchers, and the ones that we thought was on the lowest, ranking by the committee actually ended up getting the job. So you never know who is actually going to show up, who is actually going to get the job. So consider yourself as the top candidate whenever you go for interview as well. And also, I think interviewing skills, you need to really learn once you have gotten the interview, and we can talk about this in a bit more detail as to what it is that you really need to do to make yourself really visible in your own circle. At the same time, when you're writing your reference letters or applications for a particular job, you could always overcome the idea that you have not really worked anywhere. There could be many different reasons that you could highlight, but when you prepare your resume, the other person wouldn't even know. And yet we see some very credible people, very strong resume. And as I said earlier, this lady was reading the novel, and halfway through she goes, if there is a hero in this book, I hope he kills the author, right? So there are many instances where you actually end up seeing that the person is very credible, very strong, but they are not selling themselves. So you can make the best car in the world, But if your sales department is not that good, you're not going to sell very many. So it's really important to know that you prepare. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. This is a really key rule, no matter where you go, that you need to really look at the job. You look at it, who might be applying, what is your potential competition? I mean, we have these two young, bright ladies, you know, they don't have to impress Jamil by you and myself, because I think we will be long, at least I will be long gone, you know, and retired or maybe doing many different things. So I wouldn't be reviewing their portfolios or their resume. It's your competition is sitting right next to you. So know your competition really, really well. So as to who else could be applying, how can I really project myself, and how can we help? We are always here. If there is any issue that any of our listeners are having, you know, by all means, send me a little note, an email, and we will help you really write letters. I could tell you, mashallah, you know, both Sukaina and Farwa and all the other listeners are bright. They're sharp, they're smart, they're the best that we have ever had in terms of human race. You know, they are well prepared, well organized, well structured, and every, you know, thing is on their PAM. I worked with 37 you know, candidates from Pakistan last year, and we got all 37 of them full scholarships to come to North America. You know, and 27 of them are girls. And it is really, you know, you need to prepare yourself and plan, you know, and strategize in a way that you could really prepare your resume in a way, and you target those people who may, you know that looking for students, and looking for a job, looking for trainees, and, you know, don't look for that dream job, you know, and don't hope that, you know, somebody will come knocking at your door. Hope is never a good strategy. You know, it's just like shooting an arrow in the air and you hope that a bird will come in front of it. But we are there to help you out if you need any help.
Thank you, Dr. Saab. And as you can see, as I'm struggling with my technology today. However, Dr. Saab, I had an idea when you were discussing. So, so the common theme is when you send a resume, you sell yourself. So, from what I've understood from your discussion, is basically no, it's not just that. It's just that it's knowing where you're applying and aligning yourself with them so that they can see your benefit. So it's more than just selling yourself. So that was just one point. And of course, then we'll summarize everything that we have discussed today. The second point that you mentioned was to, you know, build relationship with your professors and all that. The second question I have from Laiba in Toronto, I think it's a bit related to it. I'll see if you agree with that. And she asks, I have heard of networking. And before I go ahead, I think one of our participants from previous programs has mentioned that to me, Faryal. And the question was, I've heard of networking to find a job. How do I start doing it? How important is it? So I think it takes off of your advice of getting in, you know, getting that emotion, depositing in the emotional banks of those professors, and then I think it starts there. But if you can spend a few minutes on elaborating that, that would help, I think.
So, you know, that's really a great question, and most of our youth often really struggle with this because, you know, if you have one particular discipline that you specialize in or you're interested in, you will go for it, and it's not that hard, right? But this younger generation, mashallah, they are good at too many things, and these choices often cause paralysis, right? They cannot figure out what should I do, which discipline should I go, and more often than not, they end up actually boiling or trying to boil the ocean to make a cup of tea, right? So they go all over the place, and it becomes really hard to focus and target as to where you really need to be. So I think ask yourself that, can I see myself doing that particular job for the rest of my life? You know, is this really something that I have passion for? This is what makes me come alive. This is what gives me heebie-jeebies. Every morning I get these heebie-jeebies. Oh man, I love this stuff. My precious, that kind of stuff. So I think it's really, really important that you really think about the area that you want to excel and focus on. So this cuts out a lot of distractions that really take away your ability to put effort into a particular area. But, once you have done this, and we talked about this earlier too, it is really important that you target that specific area and then do your homework. Do your homework. Who are the people that could really help you get from point A to point B? And what it is that you really need an expert, expert advice or expertise. And talk to people who could really mentor you, help you narrow down your own areas of research, but, or your career. And I can tell you that, no two thumbprints are identical. No two irises are identical. No two people are identical in terms of their passion for their career. So we cannot get into your head and heart to figure out what it is that you're really looking for. But if you assume that, it is a job whereby I would need to really seek the expertise of people who could be potential mentors for me in that discipline, go and see them, right? Go and see them and talk to them and ask them what it is that, if you were in that particular position, what kind of, employee would you be looking for? I think, it's hard for most people to believe that I never applied for a job in my life because I never looked for a job, right? I don't consider what I do as a job. I considered it as my life, right? This is something that I love to do. And once you do this, your job will come to you. This is something that I can guarantee you. So increase the circle of influence, get to know people who are in the area that you are interested in pursuing, find out what are the trends, where are the cutting edge, research going, what is that, which particular area of businesses, for example, will be the need of the future, and then really prepare yourself accordingly. If you have any particular thing in your mind, we will be happy to help you really guide navigate through this kind of terrain.
Thank you, Saab. I think the answer is very explanatory and self-explanatory and defined. So I'm sure Naiba will, if she's listening, she will take on from there, and also our other participants. So without further ado, I think Farwa had a question that she wanted to ask related to the discussion going on. So Farwa, please go ahead.
Yes, assalamu alaikum. Jamil uncle kind of, created a great segue into the question that I initially had. It was about networking, because, I'm in my 4th year now, and I feel like having a solid network, does help with getting a job. So my question for you was, what tools and maybe like platforms would kind of better help you create that network, and kind of just how do you begin that relationship with a potential mentor or with a network?
Yeah, so, I always say that you are an average of 5 people that you hang out with, your colleagues, your friends. You are the sum of whatever really those 5 people will be doing, right? And so I think you really, take a lot of those expertise into yourself. And then what you do is that you need to really be proactive, right? Not reactive. The trouble with our mindset and psychic in our community is we are always reactive. If I'm bitten by a snake, I will run to kill it, instead of taking care of the poison first and then going after the snake. But we try to actually get after the snake. So what we do is that a lot of the time, the subconscious part of our mind is influenced by people around us as well. So your friend, for example, will come and say, you know what? My dad was telling me that he just talked to a Nobel laureate who said that the next thing is actually, dealing with COVID-related vaccines or something, which is going to be really trendy, or IT will be a trend, or this area will be trend. So what happens is that eventually people, they start thinking not about their own career goals and aspirations, and they kind of just get swayed away. So I think if you have focus, you're determined, you will know in your community and in your circle, and also in the academia circle, who are the people who actually are influential in their respective, and they are approachable, they are accessible. And then you really make an appointment to see them. Be bold, be courageous, and take the initiative yourself, and write them an email that, I have learned a great deal about yourself, and that you are an excellent mentor for young youth in their career development, and your students have gone on to do really well. I would like to come, and can I buy you a cup of coffee? And of course, he or she will buy you coffee because they are supposed to. They are professors. But I tell you, we look after cows because they give us milk. We look after chicken because it gives you eggs. Dog is the only animal that doesn't lay egg or give you milk. You walk in, he goes, you actually end up, not us, but most white people will end up kissing their dog before they kiss their children in their wife. That level of enthusiasm and excitement is really contagious. So when you meet those people, show that level of, excitement, and how grateful you are for them to find time and see you and meet. Honestly, people who don't have time, they will find time for you. I have students who actually come and knock at my door, and it says, Dr. Syed, I'm sitting here until you're available. I just need to ask you a couple of things. I tell you my personal example. I gave a talk at, in University of Toronto, a Holton Memorial Lecture. And I finished my talk, and this young lady, she just jumped. And she said to me, Dr. Syed, I was thinking of quitting my research after doing master's because I got sick and tired of, watching these geese fly into the tunnel. And I was watching their respiratory patterns, and I got really fed up. I wanted to quit. But I got so excited about your research, I want to do a PhD with you. And before I could say anything, she said, if you don't let me in your lab, I'm going to do a hunger strike outside. I said, oh my God, this is another, a crazy person or something. So I tell you what, when I got back Monday into my lab, she was sitting outside with her backpack and everything else. She said, I don't care. I'm going to do hunger strike. You have to let me in. And I tell you, I had to find money for her to do. She finished her PhD in 3 years. She went then to work with NIH with Mo Ming-pu, who was nominated for Nobel Prize. She's now the dean of your faculty at Toronto, right? So that level of enthusiasm where you commit yourself forces the actual mentor to go out of their way to accommodate and entertain you. So have your passion, have your commitment, approach them directly, saying that, I have heard wonderful things. You are really a fantastic mentor, and I would like to really, tap into 5 to 10 minutes of your time. Can I buy you coffee, right? And once they will definitely respond because you have said all the good things about them. You are a great mentor. You are an excellent. I have heard great things about you. So you have actually grasped their attention, and it says, well, what a friendly fan could do really bad things to me. Okay, a cup of coffee sounds like a good idea. So actually, when you meet them, you explore their brain and really tell them how passionate you really are, and how now what you have done is that you have deposited in the emotional bank account. If you ever needed a reference letter, that person will not shy away. They will always remember you. They will always think that, what a polite, kind, generous, gracious, wonderful youth that you really are. And I think I told the story earlier too, about passion is really, really the one that is contagious. I had a student once and he started PhD with me, and I asked him to write his thesis proposal. So he wrote that, after 5 years, I will have a $6 million man, a cyborg, half human, half man, wandering around in Dr. Syed's lab. So I gave him an F. I said, your project has got to be feasible, realistic. This is not, it's not going to happen. I said, okay, I will give you a chance. You've got long weekend, write, it's only 1.5, 2 pages. Rewrite your proposal and I change my grade. Otherwise, I'm giving you an F. So I gave him an F. You know what? Tuesday, he comes to my office. I asked him, sit down. He sat in front of me. He pushed that paper towards me and he said, Dr. Syed, you can keep your F. I'm keeping my dream, right? So I took that grade and I turned it into an A+. He finished his PhD in 4 years with an MD and a PhD together. So I think, your passion, is really contagious when you approach people, approach with zeal, zest, and gusto, enthusiasm, respecting their time, and also acknowledging their ranks in the academic circles, or whatever that might be.
Perfect. Farwa, does that give you some semblance of what you're going to have to do in the next few years of your life?
Maybe more than what you need.
Yeah, I was making notes. I was like, this is an amazing answer, and it's always so nice to have someone like you just to kind of give a person in my position some feedback on how to, get your foot in the door and just kind of start networking and build that relationship with different people. So I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
She's a quick learner. She's already started.
Well, I think, this is our future. You guys are really the gift of Imam Zamana to us. We can never shortchange you, ever. So if we could ever do anything, we are there. We are your servants. We are actually there to serve you. So, I may not be wiggling my tail or, my ear, but we will be there to help you all the way. Because I think you are the game changers, inshallah. You will change the game. And it's not really what you do or what kind of job you have, it's what you do with what you have. And at the end, I think that is something that's really important. Don't consider yourself compared to anybody else, because, they are not you and you are not them. So be yourself. And, if you're happy and you're satisfied in your job, no one is richer than you. No one is more successful than you, and no one is more highly ranked individual because you're satisfied from within.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Saab. And we have time for one more question for today's program. That will be from Sukaina. So please unmute your mic and start with your question.
I had just a question more so geared towards new grads. I graduated 2 years ago, but I still consider myself a new grad because I graduated in COVID. But a lot of times I've found that new grads tend to settle for jobs kind of below their skill level or their caliber because they get faced with a lot of an interview.
Yeah, sorry, you're cutting off. We can't hear you. Or is it just me?
No, I think her line is dropping.
Yeah, I think it's the. Okay, let me message her.
Am I back now? Sorry.
Yes, you are. Go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry, so you have to start over.
No worries. We can cut that out of the video. But my question was just more so geared from the perspective of new graduates, because I've found that a lot of new graduates will sometimes settle for jobs below their skill level or their caliber because they kind of get faced with that chicken and the egg situation of you need experience to get a job, but you need the job to get experience. And so you settle for something that you feel like you could be doing a lot more with the skills that you have. So I found a lot of people I know in the same position, in the same kind of like generation as me, have that issue. So I was just wondering if you had any advice you would give to them.
I think a really great question. And it is true that lots of youth really struggle. They even take a year off, and looking for the right opportunity, right job, right entry, and they consider, wow, maybe this is really not the time for me. So I think, if your education, I always tell people that we don't prepare you for Faculty of Medicine. We prepare you for Faculty of Life. Right. So if your academics, system has given you the skill sets, and you have learned, education for the sake of education, not for job or money, it really doesn't matter where you end up working. Right. You will rise to the ranks because the other people who are in that same field do not have the same skill set and the academic background, zeal, zest, gusto, and really the ability to, excel no matter what you do. So like I said, it's not what you really have. It's what you do with what you have. So many a times, sometimes you enter a, job level whereby you think that, hey, I don't really fit in here. This is not what I learned. I tell you, 57% of the adult Canadians are illiterate. They are illiterate because what they learn in the school and university is no longer being really, invoked or applied by the companies that they work for. They forget, right? The skills that they have learned, they forget. But sometimes, it's important that if you depending on the situation you have, if you need really money to pay a student loan or help family, you get into the job, but then don't regret it. The regret is the one that really drags you down. You do become, judgmental. You judge yourself as compared to your other friends, and you walk in and your friend will say, oh yeah, don't compare yourself to them. As long as you're happy doing this, and look for the opportunity to climb in that organization and get better and better and get the experience. And then always be vigilant. Climbing K2 of Mount Everest is really tough, right? So people get up there, they take a selfie, or they put their little flag, and then they dash down. But what Bill Gates did? He never let his people look down. He showed them the next peak and then the next peak, right? They kept going from, Apple computers to, iPhone to iPad to now they're coming up with iMat, which is a kind of it'll be a mat that will roll into, you can put it in a little, box, and that's your computer. So, you can flatten it out, and then when you lift it up, the actual, the screen will project your keyboard onto the pad. And then you just touch, right? So they keep looking for new, innovative, and exciting ways to really move forward. So, the most important thing is that don't let people run your life, right? You find satisfaction in what you do, Allah will give you barakah, right? And then you feel personal satisfaction. You're a lot more happier at the job. You do well. When you do well, you excel, you actually get promoted. And all of this experience that you get through different moving along those ranks will eventually get you ready much more better than. Let me tell you something really straight. Those A grade students that you always envied, they had all A pluses on their transcripts. You know what? They're working for C grade students. 99% of the time. It's the C grade student who actually runs, right? Because they know how to figure out how to find themselves out of trouble. I always give this example that this kid, had to hand his homework in the morning, but he arrived at lunchtime, and then the teacher said, Jonathan, why are you handing your homework so late? I'm going to mark you down. He says, Professor, I live down the hill and it rained last night and then it got really cold. And every time I took a step towards school, I slipped 2 steps backwards. So I couldn't really get to that. I climbed, and then The professor looked at him and says, okay, so if that is true, then you would have never been able to make it to school. 1 step towards school, 2 steps towards home. How did you make it then? So, I started walking towards my home, right? So I was going in the other direction now. So these kids who actually, tap into these kinds of, resources because they find, way out of a problem or trouble, they are the one that rule the world. So anyhow, to cut the long story short, the point really here is that, it depends on individual needs. And if you are really desperate for a job, I would say take the job, because whatever the academia needed to teach you, you should have already learned the basic way of independent thinking and to think. Most things in our life we learn in kindergarten, right? And after that, we build on those skill sets as we go through academia. So if the academia has not empowered you to manage your life or the service to society, it doesn't matter which job you have, you will never learn this. And then if your need dictates that, yes, you need to have job, I will say that even if it's a low entry level job, take it. Because this is where you will really learn the bottom as to how the companies are built, how they function. So if you went onto the top, you will know everything, what happens at the bottom, right? At all the levels. So I think you would really climb very, very quickly up. So I think, it depends on individuals, what kind of, circumstances they have. If they could spare, to enhance their skills, maybe do graduate school, do a master's or PhD. And sometimes, for example, in this time and age, jobs are really hard to come by. So when you look at the tree realizes that, this winter is coming, these leaves and everything else is a liability I'm going to shed. But that doesn't mean that the tree is dead, right? It has no fruits. You can see that it looks dead, but actually it's building its roots. It's building its roots, it's branching, it's going deep looking for water. So when the spring actually comes, boom, off it goes. So I think, there are different circumstances, but, weigh your own preferences and then go after them.
Well, thank you, Doc Saab. Sukaina, I hope that gives you some directions. We can talk more into the next program. Unfortunately, the time for today's episode is ending. In conclusion, I'll just briefly touch upon a few of the topics that were discussed. So basically, we did talk about someone starting a job without experience, how to go about it. And Dr. Saab did mention, create, first of all, be confident, create relationships with the professors, and which led us to our next question: build a network. And for that, you need to go out to people, by doing your homework, not only for to professors, but also to people in your industry. Go talk to them and try and resonate with them and see how the two of you would match. We also did talk about more about networking as to how to develop it. And the last question, of course, was about what if I get a job but it's not really up to my skills, which Dr. Saab there very clearly said, okay, start the job. If you are skilled and talented, your skills and talents will show and will help you progress. The added advantage, as he explained in that, was that the system in and out, and you'll be successful in your new position. We'll talk some more about these topics in the next episode. But for now, we'll have to end the program with a note that anyone around the world can participate in these programs, as these are being recorded on Zoom. The numbers for our contact numbers are on the screen. You can WhatsApp us. You can either send us a question, or if you want to participate, you can message there, and we'll work with you to see how you can be a part of this program. Thank you so much. Bless you all. Have a nice day.